To understand the planet, one would need to learn of its origins. The creator of that world, Kraith, was that beginning. His first creation, a lesser god, whom he named Terrillian, was to be his wife, his queen, and the goddess to all who would later come. Yet in time, her imparted glory became a thorn to her, as she would always be a creation, a lesser to Kraith, and the seeds of envy and pride would then grow. Now Kraith, in all of his love for his first creation, took it upon himself to perform the most taxing of labors and build a world, his second creation. But no ordinary world would he make for his extraordinary bride. He wove together a world within a world within a world, rich in beauty and bewitchingly flawless. Kraith then filled his creation with beautiful plants, animals, and natural inhabitants. Each world within world, standing alone yet interdependent, with its own vegetation and life. The subterranean worlds would be lit by bioluminescent light from the shells of the other worlds, and rain would fall from the mists of the great waterfalls that tumbled from world to world. Seeing the beauty of his hand's creation complete, Kraith gifted this world to his bride Terrillian, and named it after her. Terrillian, realizing for the first time the magnitude of Kraith's power, looked upon his gift not with joy and thankfulness, but rather with desire for his world, not for his world, but for his ability. She grows then to envy, and then within him an ever-darkening fit of jealousy. Having been created to be a goddess, her self-love would not allow her to be second to any, and her prideful tendencies would not allow anyone to be greater than herself, even if it was her love and her creator. Welcome to the Terrillian podcast, where we discuss the magnificent world of Terrillian. I am one of your hosts and all-around book nerd, Beard, and I am joined today by the creator of Terrillian, madman and genius,
Ian, that's me.
And I'm Chris, the music producer and media manager.
Also joining us is the ever-silent Marina, the producer and other half to all of our brains.
So first question of the day, going to Ian. What are your thoughts behind the multi-tiered world? Why multi-tiered world?
Well, for a number of reasons. From a gameplay perspective, it does open up... Sorry, gotta get in close. My number one problem. So from a gameplay perspective, it does allow you to have a lot of different kinds of, like, I guess say, biomes as far as, being the fact that you're working with a multi-tier world, you can deal with a lot of different types of different, foliage, plants, and races. And because it's segmented in a multi-tiered world, it allows you to really diversify each one and allow them to be very, very unique. While with most places you go, you'll have a little bit of a kind of a smoothing over between cultures because they have levels of trade and interaction with each other. So you see crossovers between two different cultures. But for having a multi-tiered world, you have that disconnect between different groups, which really allows you to kind of allow one group to be very unique from another without messing up the lore of the story.
What groups? You mean races? It sounds more like from a player experience.
Yeah, and again, the design of the game itself, and including the planet, was always designed with the idea that it would be a game. So when I say groups, I do refer to the races that are in that world, and in some cases, the creatures that are in there as well as, the plants and the rest of the wildlife that would be residing in whichever portion you find yourself on that planet.
Cool, exciting stuff. Let's change gears just a little bit then. Beer, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to actually just interject too real quick, just as I was reading that little segment there that Ian wrote and I edited, but like reading it that for the third time, I think is what it was. But when I got to that segment where it was about the inner worlds and how they're lit by the bioluminescent light, and like there's rain that's coming from the mists of the great waterfalls as they tumble from world to world. And like it really does kind of paint this picture in my head that's absolutely gorgeous of did you ever see Journey to the Center of the Earth, the old one?
Yeah.
And I had that kind of picture of my head, but instead of like blue skies like in that one, because it was a cheap production, you have this cavernous ceiling like miles above you, and there's lichen and all kinds of bioluminescent life just growing on the stalactites and whatnot that are up there, lighting up this world. And so it's like it's dim but beautiful, and then you get the mist flowing in and the light being diffused by that mist. I'm just like, that just to me, that's a beautiful picture, and I just absolutely love what you came up with there.
Yeah, and for a while, one of the things that I really got into was actually trying to create, legit biospheres, with plants and fish and whatnot. And it was something I saw on a post, I think it was on Pinterest or something along those lines, and it stuck with me ever since. But the idea of creating that multi-tiered, planet, the classic Vernian idea of, the center of the earth, but in a much more pocketed sense to where it's not just one hollow donut design, but a series of pockets, which would be more realistic to the way that the planet would be able to support its frame. I just thought would be the best way to really give the whole planet some depth and to really kind of shake it up.
Nice. Yeah, I really appreciated the imagery, especially with that reading. I was able to visualize it. But it had me thinking though, why is it, or what was your thinking behind gifting a world, right? It's an epic idea. It's massive. We're talking about the beauty of this world of Terrillian, but why this rather than something else? What was the foundation or reasoning behind gifting a world?
To add weight to the betrayal. So
Elaborate, please.
you have
That is
something
awesome.
you have something which is, by your own words, grandiose in its gesture. It's a labor of love. It's something that was designed in its intention to be a gift for someone that the god loved. Kraith loved Terrillian. He named it after her. It was never meant to be an item of, let me see, let me show you how powerful I am. It was always meant to be like, let me show you how much I love you. So when Terrillian betrays him, it just shows you the level of just hatred that she develops, the level of jealousy, the level of pride that she develops in that. So it kind of gives you that really heavy-handed backstab that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the world and sets that tone for that divide between Terrillian herself and the rest of the planet.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
I know you don't. We didn't necessarily in that segment get into the actual betrayal of Kraith. It's like heavily insinuated that that's what's going to happen because nobody that gets jealous of someone else, tends to let that just be. Um, but it is one of those aspects that I don't think we had you and I, in our conversations. I don't think we had cleared it out yet. Did Kraith, I don't even know if you want to get into this, but did Kraith end up managing to make any other creations that were supposed to stand up and aspire after Trillian before he created the world? Or did he create Trillian and then create the world? Because it says that like his second creation was the world. So no one actually ended up aspiring after her, or is that just not included in the creations?
So the idea that you're working kind of like with a biosphere, just to kind of elaborate backwards a little bit. The biosphere itself is a contained unit. It's meant to be looked at, it's meant to be beautiful in itself, and it's meant to be a fully sustainable, contained setup. That's kind of the way it was designed. I mean, the creation inside can't help but admire the genius behind the world itself. You can't help but notice the intelligent design behind the planet, but it wasn't designed in the regards that people would immediately be like, oh yes, this is Terrillian. It was designed to be a living thing. The planet itself is made to kind of be, in its nature, it's kind of like having a diamond. The diamond isn't meant to worship the owner or love the owner. The diamond is meant to show the owner of said diamond how loved they are by its nature.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what Terrillian is itself. It would be that hypothetical diamond.
Right. No, that makes sense. I was actually talking about the person Trillian.
Oh, I apologize. That's one of the biggest things that I always run into is the fact that I named the planet after the person Terrillian as well. So I always get confused. And
No, it's all
so
good.
to go backwards, what exactly was that question again?
So the question is just I'm looking at what I read and thinking, so Terrillian was created to be aspired after by the other creations, yes?
Yeah.
But you say
And
that his second creation was the world of Terrillian. So before she betrayed Kraith, did he create other gods?
like other deities of her status
Or
Or
anything, any other
less
creations.
or
lesser,
lessers.
yeah.
So he did. I guess you say he did inhabit the planet as far as creating other lives that lived on the planet. The idea would be that he would create this amazing planet and they would go to that planet.
Okay, so they would like walk on it
Be
as
on
the
it.
rulers of that world.
Yeah, so they would actually go
Okay.
to that planet and be on that planet. That's why if to kind of progress the story but not give away too much later on, but if you look at the comparative size of this planet to everything else that exists around it, it's enormous.
Right.
It's just
Like Jupiter compared to the moon.
exactly like it's just way larger than anything else. It's the expression that it is his masterpiece for her cannot be understated enough. It is the big pinnacle of his work. It is his masterpiece for her.
Yeah.
So
I like it a lot.
with that, then, could you go more into the relationship details of Kraith and Terrillian? We've already touched base on it some, but more about like what's the foundation? What was that based on? Like you talked a little bit about her being jealous and everything, and that led to the actions that she took. But can you explain a little bit more about why she is the way she is, why what happened? Just more details about that relationship.
So, I mean, it's a classic relationship style between a creation and creator. I mean, you will always have that level of, I don't want to say it's always there, but there's always a little level of jealousy between the created and the creator. You always have, like, before we even started the podcast, Beard made a pretty solid point as far as, in the term of robotics, where the guy creates the robot and then the robot becomes sentient, and then the robot's very next course of action is annihilating its creator and then becoming its own creator essentially, or becoming its own master in that regard. It's the same kind of concept. You have this where someone creates something with that good intention of creating something, either whether or not to love, or creating something with the utmost pure of intentions. But then you have what they creating having that self-awareness and seeing the fact that they are so much lesser than what they've been created by. You have that level of jealousy. And then when you have the story between Terrillian herself and a god like Kraith, you can't help but kind of understand why she gets jealous, just because of the comparison between the two. But then when you have him performing all this labor of love, which to her is nothing more than a feat of him just making something so much better, and just kind of putting the podium up of showing just how much better he is as far as creating something. It really does put in perspective just the level of his power versus hers, and then it just kind of progresses that level of jealousy, and then that thing just kind of slowly turns into a level of, like, I guess you could say psychosis, or a point where she's just fixated on the idea that she is lesser than somebody else. So that would be kind of their relationship. Because
and that's a pretty fundamental idea as well, which I think is brilliant to start off of, because I mean it's a very easily understandable concept, and in some ways, makes it, I don't want to say relatable, but I think I already said it. Like it's a very understandable concept to start with, and I think it's a great foundation for a story.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeet.
Anything else you want to add?
I mean, there's a lot to that whole story and relationship between, Terrillian herself, Kraith, and how that all unfolds. Whether or not, I don't want to jump too far down the rabbit hole, especially with a subject like that, where I would really like to be able to dedicate a full podcast episode just to that fall, just relationship to that betrayal and how that progressed into the following for the remaining of the story. Because really, this is kind of the start of the rest of this whole world. Really, this is the where the gas, hits that engine and starts this whole thing up.
So coming up on podcast number 3. To be continued. With that, we will draw to a close. We do appreciate all of you who have listened to our comprehensive discussion of the planet known as Terrillian. We entice you to listen and learn, following along with each podcast, so that you will visualize the vivid and vast world of Terrillian. The tragic tale set forth for the main protagonist, where you as the gamer play to conquer lands and legends, thus creating a lore of your own. In doing so, we hope to gain your favor to turn these stories into a video game. If you want to see more content, check out our website at terrilliangaming.com. For more episodes, find us on Spotify and YouTube. Support our emerging